Okay, now we look into part 3 of the series. If you're finding this in the middle way or somehow haven't seen the first part or two, go to the very end of this, and in your top right hand corner, it will actually take you to part 1. In the top left hand corner, it'll go on to another recent topic. But ironically, where I was at, and it stopped on me. I've got it on a 45-minute set increment, and it's supposed to notify me 5 minutes before and give me a dingu. But I tried to turn that off so you didn't hear it whenever it does the one whenever it tries to turn on and off the charging device that's on it, and it auto turns off my video if it gets to 20%. So I have to leave that on for notification there, but it still won't ding whenever it notifies me. Anyhow, it's my woes, and feel for that. But I was discussing before and have really lost the track of it, but you could tell where I was going, definitely. That it looks like we were on the verge of some type of steam-powered and industrial revolution type of concept that was really edging on it, and it seems like BC times and coming right into the time of the turn of the ages. And within a few hundred years, many of the aspects of knowledge that we knew from ancient times seems to have been lost in some way, and or maybe not lost, but well, she probably says it better than I do.
And some things that should not have been forgotten were lost.
And they got lost for a long time. And not really lost, but misplaced in some ways. For some people still kept this knowledge, and you have to peer back through a lot of knowledge to find it. But it's been well over 2,000 years. How long has it been?
History became legend. Legend became myth. And for 2,500 years, the ring passed out of all knowledge.
Huh. Well, it's good that the dawning of Age of the Aquarius, that we actually are seeing some type of revelation and a chrysalis type thing that's happening where a butterfly came out of this worm that had been creative, that lived off of this apple.
Until, when chance came, it ensnared a new bearer.
So, sometimes we talk about bearers of light and situations. You know, whenever I was a kid, it seemed like, and I say this in a lot of videos, that rock and roll had a connection to it, and it was in my face. It seemed like in every movie, in every video, and a lot of literature, in symbology that is still existent to this day, and odd things, and in songs would get me to think other things. Like, I'm sure whenever I show you some of these things, you think of other things that you know about. You know, it triggers other thoughts, and you make connections and so on. But I remember hearing Jefferson Starship. You know, remember, they did White Rabbit back in the day. But remember, we built this city, and we built this city on rock and roll, knee deep in the hoopla. Well, we built this city on rock and roll, and I remember that, thinking about how they would have built these megalithic structures like this, and we thought that they had rounded off similar sized logs, and they would roll them across them and had a few extra, and as they came out the other end, somebody would run around and put it in front of it and keep it going. But it seemed like that Egyptians were doing it all with a sled, and that they even had that ancient boat on a sled and all these type of things that went with it. So they're using a sled type technology. Wow, that's strange. But I saw iconography that went with a lot of things, like Journey had the winged sun disk with them, and it seemed like right whenever I was studying things would come out. In the earliest of days, Styx had a Pieces of 8 album, and I was studying about pirates, but also studying about Easter Island. And I was having these island type dreams, and I've also studied about saltwater sharks and all types of situations, things that go with along with this. And at this time, Out Comes Pieces of Eight type of album, and they've got some things on there that are quite strange. And of course, there's their UFO tale about coming down on a ship and come sail away with me. And so that got me going on a lot of the UFO concepts. And I told you before, even to this date, that I had already seen Chariots of the Gods. But ironically, whenever I was studying Chariots of the Gods, right before that movie came out, I was studying where chariots came from and horses and these ancient Scythians that they weren't really saying much about. And they found some of these domed burials, and they were just kind of similar to these ones they found over here, and weren't just, and it's about all you could get out of it. And of course, I'm talking late 70s in timeline. So things were odd back then too. Disco, butterfly collars, all of that. Some of us may remember some of that, but if you're trained to say that if you remember it, you weren't there. It's kind of like Woodstock. So these structures, though, and where we were at this discussion is on the fact that it seems to retard right off the bat that what you have is looking like people were well refined and then seemingly lost to time. So let's just go through what he says. The most ancient stone structures are the most advanced. In Italy, for example, Etruscan aqueducts, and I've got a video, 3-parter coming out on Etruscans, maybe I'll do that first, and monuments are more tightly put together than later Roman era constructions, although Romans are fantastic and everything, but they started building out of concrete and doing all these other things, and there's a different era too that goes off of that came out, but they were building with Crete, with the ash flow and things and sand that had come from Crete, and it automatically made stone, right? And they had figured this out, but it looks like we had advanced plasters way before this. The Great Pyramid of Cheops, he says, is thousands of years older than the inferior pyramids that surround it. And I know it's not necessarily. I mean, there are pyramids like even of the ones at Meroe and stuff, and of course those are inferior in civilization, but those were done by the vassals and the viceroys and the people that were controlling it, and then they were, repurposed later and never kept up in any way. Of course, there's been a lot of lack of upkeep, even of the Great Pyramid, and how it lost all of its ancient outer shell that it had on it. But it could, and many people think that it is much more thousands of years older than we give credit for, and in fact the Sphinx and all those things go with it. But let's just continue. The aqueduct in Segovia, Spain, said to be Roman built, is far more advanced than later aqueducts that the Romans do put out. But famously, they're known for the Roman aqueducts, and we had shown a picture of it. I started with that one up in the corner there. And the level of technology that goes along with that concept and being able to build this giant bridge that to this day, whenever somebody would pull it off, would be quite some feat that we've grown a little bit accustomed to for some reason, but you can imagine these spans and stuff. And it's amazing. None of these bridges really have gone bad in hundreds of years now that we've been doing larger bridges. I mean, you think of Golden Gate Bridge and things along that line. There has to be maintenance and upkeep, but it's amazing what's been able to be done. The development of many technologies in the ancient world often seems to reflect a more degeneration and decay than progress, perhaps is really a result of a genuine pattern of a great year cycle of the decline and fall of civilizations, where the great period of spiritual achievement occurred over 10,000 years ago and has been followed by a period of ever accelerating spiritual decline. The purpose of my new book, or his new book, was to help, this is a Cicero, by the way, is to help uncover the real truth of human past in order to understand and eventually to reverse this decline. And I think it's, I don't have a metaphysical, angle on it like that. I pretty much want everybody to try to remember things that are fastly becoming something that's so far back in a few layers of mist that all you hear is something about it and don't know how it existed, and where we kind of came from is made to believe in some fairy tale type of situation. Poof, popcorn, we're here, and we're going to go with that rather than the actual history of mankind that now we're smart enough to be able to trace back. And small pieces keep showing up more and more. And with my videos, I keep showing new additions along with old additions and knowledge. And like I say, until we had genetics, I was going off theorism, symbolism, shards of pottery, and ancient folklore type of things. And what's amazing is that still keeps enveloping itself into the situation. And genetics just actually reinforces what before would have been an educated guess at best, and also looked on upon as you're just reaching. And now things, especially with Göbekli Tepe and other things showing up, it seems that we didn't necessarily have a loss, but we thought that we did. Imagine that Göbekli Tepe and so on and everything, and it comes in and it goes to the Greeks and so on. So maybe this same iconic culture in waves in different areas had to do with all of it. And I'm showing that it connects back at one or two levels past the point that we really have knowledge of, and being coming from a very similar people. And they try to peg it on this Yamna culture and everything, because it definitely shows that that culture is hooked up in with what goes on. But then there's early European farmers and hunter-gatherers that are in on it, along with the Anatolian people, who are very similar, and the Proto-Indo-Europeans are very similar, but they're coming down into an area where during the last ice age and maximum, everybody was pretty much, and now they have gone back to an area of a long time ago that they had a recollection that they had lost in this land that had been taken over, and they get it back. This great year of cycle that they talk about too, this is the whole zodiacal procession. And we can see these people in ancient cultures, especially Greeks, because at least they were at the point of finally tabulating it well, and they had a way with words. Sometimes good, sometimes quite bad with their allegory, and it shows you that they had it all built up, that it wasn't some, placid thing that they had going on, but even at the point that they first have their earliest tales and so on, that it was all built up. But they talk about great decline in civilizations and how things repeat themselves in cycles. And even in the story of Atlantis, he talks about how there are repeated cycles that have happened, and you only remember the last one because you got screwed over real bad. We all kind of did. And we're only a remnant left of that coming back from it. And you lost all your people that were smart and only left with the hill people. Something along that line, right? But it had happened many times before. And looking at it, there's this great flood that happened for Deucalion and those people. And it looks like there was a catastrophe that happened over here. But there was the Sumerian one, and there was one before. And apparently the god had said that it wouldn't happen again, and it did. And the original old ancient Sumerians moved and ended up in a totally different place. And even in the Lament of it tells you that these other people, these people like the Susa and stuff, had come into that area that were not from there, but were attached up. I mean, that's really right next to it. And connections that even when we talk about Sumerians that we don't make, and then Akkadians, and then there's this Babylonian thing, and then, bad. They're bad, right? Everybody's bad. Egypt is bad, and Babylonia were bad. Everybody was bad, and these tent people were fantastic. Well, no, read the story. They were bad and they kept flipping from weird gods and other people's gods and all kinds of things, right? So, whenever we really look back at history, we come to find out, man, there was a whole lot of good going on. In fact, there's more similarities between everybody than there is differences. And when it goes back far enough, you can see a connection to all ancient people. And I show it a lot with Proto-Indo-Europeans and the current even religions and variations on a theme, just like Sanskrit all the way to Ireland has a common linguistics that hooks all the way up. But then also things like sphinxes, and they've got them all up in Greece in that area, and they have them in Egypt, and here's this symbology over here, and here it is way over here. And in this show here, we've done something as simple, or this guy did, and I added to it, as simple as doorways and a master of beasts. And it holds either a snake, or it holds lightning, or it holds this. And it's a master of certain aspects of knowing when the rainy seasons is, and knowing whenever the seasons of the year come in, and winter, and its rebirth. Snakes and this essence of a long trial of cycle of these things that go along before there's a big cycle, and the circle of life, and it encompasses a much longer time than you think of all these people going to be alive. And it's hard to even grasp the concept that you are talking and passing on knowledge that each little phase of takes over 2,000 years to go through. And we've discussed how it rolls back through Pisces, through Aries, through Taurus, through Leo, into Scorpio, and you can see some concepts and how long ago they come from, right? And that leads into the last ice age. But is it a spiritual decline? Is it a lack of nature? Is it the fact that we have become the master of beast, and because so, then there is no other frontier? Well, sure, there was frontiers and boundaries, and we pushed those and found new frontiers and found America, and finally threw up a finger and pushed that thing that led to the Industrial Revolution finally, that could have been a few hundred years past the Greeks. Literally, if it would have just happened or clicked. It didn't take too much to turn steam technology and so on, and ideas of using gasoline, or literally what was kerosene was the stuff sitting on top of tar pits that they were using to do for boats for thousands and thousands and thousands of years leading up to there. Hell, they used to dip it out and throw it away to try to get to the bitumen and the tar. It's amazing how things have come out of the simplest of things once you find a way to utilize it. And we've become able to utilize it. Our final frontier, whenever I was a kid, was Star Trek and the final frontier. And I've been trying to get there all my life, but that seems to have been a kid dream, like somebody wants to be a fireman and so on. And I understand the idea that I wasn't going to end up getting to be a flyboy. Hell, I tried to be a flyboy whenever Top Gun came out. Yeah, just a perfect timing on it. And all it took and was going to knock you out of being Maverick and you could only be Goose was one of your eyes being 2020. So what if I had 2015 in the other, and I was able to read the chart well enough? Whenever they did the super thing, there's a problem there. So what if I was in the top percentile of the class and everything else? There are just hundreds and hundreds of people going through MEPS physicals trying to see if they can end up being Top Gun too. It wasn't going to be an issue if somebody wanted to be a flyboy, especially when you find out that you come in as a commissioned officer and don't have to be on the lower rung of things. Let's continue. So we're talking about GodSelf icons here and many other things, and it's shown in the Masons and still held on there. But it's left in remnants from the old stone masons. Much evidence that would illuminate the meaning of GodSelf icon was destroyed by conquistadors, crusaders, Mongol hordes, slave traders, and really all the way up until modern times, and yet it's still is thrown in your face in a lot of ways. It could not have been taken away. And so it shows you that there were so much hands involved with trying to take it away. But there surely were some that were holding on to the old ways. And we can all thank them for it. This guy's presentation emphasizes the critical role of medieval stonemasons in preserving ancient symbols like the GodSelf icon into the present. Gothic cathedrals are marvelous examples of the GodSelf icon. Also, there's gargoyles and things like that, and some concepts in stained glass, even to this day, that they won't let go because of its beauty, that still shows paganistic twistings. And all they had to say was, well, man, to get the guys to go with it, we had to say that that was kind of a Christian thing. And yeah, Jesus is around Christmas and da-da-da, but it's like, well, hold on a minute. If we go back, there's that Tammuz of the Bible and Dumuzi and its whole Christmas thing. And doesn't Mithra have a whole thing too? And Krishna, and he was born in a cave, not a manger, but it's kind of the same. Hey, wait a minute, this is a conglomerate on all of those things as one, isn't it? So an unbabblizing of the world as we start to speak finally some type of the same linguistics that we might have had 7 to 10,000 years ago or more. And as we do, we find ourselves all of a sudden at quite a different place, and no longer are we on the edge of starving at each little drought that goes on and things, for we've become the masters of the air and the sky and the earth and the water, just like replacing those same gods that had that control that we wish we had long ago. Yeah, starting with things like boating and being the gods of the sea with Neptune, but it having our power over us, and Typhoon and Typhon and these gods that can have a problem with you. Yeah, but as we learned more and more knowledge and our control over it, we found that this was something that was still that nature that was going on, in this animalistic aspect that I always find neat in Sumeria and especially Egypt and other places where you see this Master of Beast iconography, which seems to be one of the last remnants of bestiality type or animistic type things that you would find and stuff. And you can see all these different ones, and quite often griffins and so on. And let's see, if I remember correctly, this one here would be way down in Yemen in ancient days, which would have been the Sabaeans, or what we call Queen of Sheba area. And whenever it was lush and fertile, and I've talked about in a recent video how it turned definitely green through the area whenever the Sahara ran through its green time. And now we're back to talking about cycles and how this wobble of the earth makes it to where in the summer you're a little bit closer to earth and farther away, for we swing around in an elliptical kind of an egg shape. We'll get that to a minute, too. But symbology that is shown from people that are not supposed to know these type of things. And we didn't know the earth was round and we're going to fall off of it, and Christopher Columbus and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, man, the Greeks knew it was round, the Sumerians knew it was round, and then gave declination in degrees per day, that the sun falls and everything, had it 360 degrees figured out. They had trigonometry we know now and everything. Why has this been stifled for so long and then shoved out? Well, it's because certain people looked at it as being something that the devil had brought us. If you remember, the evil devils brought us knowledge like makeup and numbers and weapons and all the things that naturally happened out of people that took us out of this primordial Eden. And this golden age that we look at quite often back was at a time when we were too stupid to know the difference of what we had done to the planet now that we've gotten past the point. Isn't that about right? And now that we sit at a juxtaposition between Star Trek and the people that didn't know any better, and we know better, and we can see the direction we're going and what we've done, hopefully we get a direction to where we're going. But man, if you look at politics and stuff that's going on now, it's amazing the left field thoughts that are going on, even in America. And everybody acts like it's all going to crap, and it's actually the best that the world's been ever doing, no matter who you look at, even though they're having a problem. And out of that, America's still shining bright. We're doing well, and all together we can sit and pull each other up and do this thing correctly. It doesn't have to be a screwing each other over. Hopefully those days are over and we can get this Star Trek thing on. It's gonna take us all to be able to save us all. You've got to find your part, make your place. That's all it is. It's that simple. We've already got a direction, and there's these people that are spacemen, and we're getting it going on. So these are all in cathedrals, though, that they're showing to this day in certain aspects that are shown here. So I may be even wrong about this. And so now we're going to get into some iconography, symbology that's later day, going to people that knew this certain knowledge and tabulating it in different ways. The clincher for this guy was the image of the rebus, an androgynous alchemical drawing published in 1613. The sun is over its right shoulder, the moon is over its left shoulder. And here we can see that iconography. Up above we can see an ancient symbol of Saturn. You also see it's a six-pointed star, and they're all around, although some of them are slightly misshapen. This isn't the best drawn, but you can see a yin and yang of a duality of personality, of a male and a female aspect, the sun and the moon, night and day that should be happening, right? The aspect of two, you can go all the way back to hunter-gatherers, and you can say, look, okay, there's hunter-gatherers. And while the women made the hearth and did all the things that made the other half of it work, and gathered and would pick out certain berries that were ripe and became used to that, and so that's why their shopping is done the way that they do it. And men go out and hunt, gather, and find shoe fit, like, look, grab. And so, men are for Mars, women for Venus. Funny how whenever we're looking into that in the ancient Venus statues and stuff, and Mars and Aries and what it connotations to and everything, and go, well, that's on a stupid Oprah Winfrey show, but there's more to that than you would ever know, and you're trying to play it off as some guymanistic type thing. And there's always been this androgynous concept that goes with it, but let's look at it more. For if you notice, this whole thing is trapped inside of an egg, right? And there's the symbology of standing on a dragon or the serpent. And we can see, right? We can see that sun disk too. But it's the world and it's flying. And so now we can see that, from I'm on the top of the world, I'm on top of creation. Some of the people didn't believe in a round earth because they said that I know you're standing here and gravity's pushing you down, but once you get here, it would make you shoot off and you would fall off, and there can't be people on the upside down on the other side of the world. And it's like, no, they don't think it's upside down. When you go there, you don't feel like you're upside down. Oh, the toilets squirt backwards. We're going to go back to this shot here in a minute, so let's go ahead and go. The rebus is an ancestor of Masonic tracing boards that feature similar dualities like the tracing boards. The message of the rebus is to overcome dualities by means of mystic techniques involving the ancient practice of balancing opposites and to find the center. Note the Masonic square and compass symbols on the left and right hands of the rebus, simple tools used to build incredibly advanced stone monuments, pyramids, aqueducts, cathedrals, which to this day remain in a testament not to the technological power of the ancients, but to their spiritual centeredness. Right? And actually it works together, where there was two kind of happening at once. And you can see an idea that's in that. And you know how the left side of your brain controls the right side of your body, and the right side of the brain controls the left, but your left controls your artistic points, and your right holds your aspect, and then you have a frontal lobe, and you have this that goes on. And how did these people know this concept back then? Well, there's just the kind of a yin and yang of everything, and after just kind of figuring out the way people think, it kind of came to them pretty easy. And somebody gets knocked on their head on the left side of it, and then they can't make the right hand anymore, and it seems to be the stroke that they had there. What's up with that? Somebody said one of the ancient ones of this, where the B is, it's been turned from a G, and it used to say Regis, which meant king. And so this would be a king and queen. Duality is one, humanistic, male and female symbol. Hooked up with the stars, the sun, the moon, the whole planet, the aspect, the egg itself of life, and the omphalos as one. Now, king of the earth, master of beasts, master of dragons. He has become the dragon. I have become death, destroyer of worlds. But let's not destroy this one. Coffee. You can see the representation of 4 to 3 also, and how that declamates the Tropic of Capricorn, and if we did one above, it's the Tropic of Cancer. It also symbolically shows a 3D representation, and the hone of the center, and the belly button of the world, and a lot of things that go together in geometric shapes. And strangely, whenever I was figuring out that it had a lot to do with that in mathematics, I was starting to study in advanced classes, advanced mathematics, even in high school. In shapes now it went together. And playing some D&D too, and it's funny how that 4-sided dice is a pyramid. And the 8-sided dice is like 2 of them stuck together in a 6-sided dice. And then also mathematically figuring out the percentage chance of 16% per dice on a 6-sided dice. 4, of course, is 25%. There's a 10-sided dice, gives you 10% chance. You can roll 2 of them and get 100% chance out of it. Call the one that's going to go first, and so one is your tens and one is your separate number, or addition, or left on. And man, all these things kept revealing themselves to me, and I thought, well, I'm silly, and all these people aren't seeing these same things that I am. But I saw some people that were, but a lot of times they all had this left field idea or right field idea, or it's space ghost, and stuff, and you're like, wow. So I try to keep it a little cleaner than that in what I can somewhat verify, and even whenever I do go out in left field, hopefully you'll notice that I do kind of mention the fact, here's a left field idea, here I'm going way out on a branch here, but da-da-da, some people say that da-da-da. I don't try to turn around and go, now I firmly believe in that, and you'll hear me whenever I do, and you can also hear me whenever I'm confident in something and telling you about it. Most Freemasons have no idea what their symbols mean. My research has convinced me that the lost secret of Freemasonry is the same as our lost secret of the Incas, and the same as the lost secret of the Egyptians, and the GodSelf icon, which is identical in form to the meaning and places as part of Egypt and Peru, and is an important key for understanding the origins and destiny of mankind. And this is written by Richard Casaro. He's got another book out called The Missing Link. And hey, I might want to look into those. I don't know if anybody watching has read of any of his 3 books that are out now. Well, 2, but by now it's probably his 3rd book that's out. And it doesn't show a picture of it or anything. But so looking at this ancient symbology, we can make a lot out of that. And I've shown other symbology that has nothing to do with this. But you can see also the arms held out here, and how the protractor is used to declamate things and make circles in geometric shapes like a spirograph, and it's amazing what you can end up making with a spirograph, but also the concept of you use that same situation whenever you're going on a map, whenever you're going across the sea, and you're cartographing the world. Yeah, and so it's a maritime symbol at the same way. And this angle here that's shown in the other hand is a square. And so one makes a square and one makes a circle, but with these two devices, you can make many geometric shapes. And if there is a guide rule in size, then we're pretty much unlimited on what we can draw in scale and form and come up with as a conceptive idea in our minds. And then simply by utilizing that, pen and paper, some simple equipment, we can come up with something in elder days as massive as the Great Pyramids and pyramids around the world. And listen, that's just a kid stacking up blocks. If you took a kid and you gave him a bunch of blocks, and that's one of the only toys that he ever had growing up, this grandiose idea he would have might have something to do with a cool shape that he came up with. And if he could add that with all of the ancient theology that had gone before and it came a culmination, that would just be intense. And you can imagine at the time these people were doing it, how satisfied and intense it was of a development. I know during our lifetime we saw the people finally make it to the moon and stuff back, being able to space at first. And that's been another accomplishment that's been kind of mulled over here in the last 50 years. And even when it hit its anniversary, people were like, yeah, that's cool now. I think part of that is definitely because we've just quelled down on space. And now it seems to cost us as much as we were doing for these incredible journeys just to keep little bitty things going on because of the bureaucracy and the amount of overload that's on it. And but it takes a special person like JFK stepping up and going, you know, we're going to make this step here and I want everybody to get behind it. And it takes a special person to say something like that, and the others to not realize he's crazy, but to realize that this is a culmination of things. And another step, and another step. And then he eventually landed on the moon, and he took another great step for mankind. And so we've become a master of our elements, and we're still just a child. If we look back when we were Star Trek, we would still look at it as like, wow, you remember whenever we were just like thinking we had it all going together and almost on the edge of it? What a great time to have lived. And if you look at it now, there's not a lot of people that are, satisfied with what's going on. I'm not really satisfied with the level that's going on and what's being put into our knowledge of the past, our knowledge of the future, our continued exposure to it as we try to go on to the future and break through this next level that we're going on that seems like it's being hampered in all too many ways. I'm purpose in many of those, and I don't like the aspect of that. It's the reason I stay in ancient cultures. But also whenever I find things like this symbology right here, I can see where even modern cultures have this go on, and how we're lucky that we are where we are now, and can realize that now maybe we have a chance to take something to the next level. And while we look at ancient times and we can see this as being a great achievement, this pales in comparison, seriously, to great buildings that we've made nowadays, and the capabilities of the people who are no longer in carts and no longer writing on clay tablets and sending it a long way with a seal on it, just making phone calls around the world in moments, making phone calls that, if hooked up right, can talk to people that are in space right now. And in not too long of a distant future, making calls to people on other planets and then on journeys to faraway places. It's going to happen. It doesn't look like it's going to be in our lifetime, for we're not gearing for it in any way, and there is a sadness in that. But wouldn't it be sad if we lost all of this that led up to it? For good or not, yin or yang, we have to remember that it's what got us here and what brought us here. So there's just some more connection, guys, that goes on to it. And I could have gone on deeper and stuff, but as you can see, it pulled to 3 parts. And if I went off on any other tangents, I could have just gone and gone and gone. But I've shown you a lot of the gone and gone on other little video snippets and pieces that connect to this. And after the time that we're talking about and into, and this Masters of Beasts, and how it hooked up to Samaria and Egypt. And here it is here, and here it is here. And swastikas, if you look, I've made 3 or 4 videos that contain remnants about it, and the Aryan video does definitely too, where here are they showing up, and here's an ancient knowledge that apparently goes back into the Ice Age enough to where it was common knowledge of these people that came into the Americas and became the Indians and the Incas as well. And where does this idea that they get pyramids come from too? And it looks just like ziggurats that aren't even one of the ones shown really here, are the ones in China that are still a great little mystery over here that's held under their little cloud off in the corner, that we know that Terran Basin mummies have a lot to do with. Anyhow, guys, like, share, and subscribe. I could just keep going and rambling, but I think that's good. And we'll go on to another subject. I think my regular here that brought this up to me and stuff and said, what do you think about this? For I instantly have a thought I can spit at you, but that's like whenever I say and things. And sometimes whenever I'm thinking of and things, it may even be something as deep as this. And I regret and I apologize that sometimes it happens, for it's unintended. But whenever I look back even at my own videos, which I don't really like to do, but I have to do to edit somehow, I get to a certain point and I go, and things, and I go, man, you had so many options right there. Why'd you just throw the ball out of bounds? Why didn't you? You could have pitched it out here. You could have done this. This guy was open. If he wasn't, here goes this guy with the long ball. You could have gone anyway. And you chose to just ditch it. And I go, oh, well, it didn't look good. Why? I had too much on my plate, and I'm trying to talk about another aspect that's not even on the plate right now. But eventually, hopefully, I'll get to the whole smorgasbord of things that are in there. And what's in that casserole? Yeah, because I recognize that flavor. And hopefully y'all have recognized the flavor of what gets shown here also. Like, share, and subscribe, and enjoy. We'll get on to the next topic that still has connections. Peace.